I know what I'm now.
Oh, here we come. Okay.
Have fun.
Thank you. 61.
Okay, is everybody back from lunch?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm here.
Yep.
I'm here.
Okay, I'm gonna start sharing my screen again. So I want to start off this afternoon with invoice entry. So as a reminder, this morning we had said that I know currently you're used to sometimes entering invoices in first. Moving forward, we're always going to get the requisition in first, get that approved and converted, and then you can do the invoice itself. So where you're going to go to do the invoice is going to be under financials, and then accounts payable, and then invoice processing. And then under invoice processing, it's going to be invoice entry. And I'll leave this screen up for a moment so that you guys can see where to go. Okay, so once you have opened up invoice entry, it should take you to a screen that looks like this. So invoices are entered in batches. Typically, what I recommend for batches is you can open up a new batch at the start of every pay cycle, which is typically just each week or each other week. The batches don't really matter too much. All they really are is a grouping mechanism. You can run reports off of batches of invoices, so that is something to keep in mind. But no matter what batch you enter an invoice into, it's still going to go through the same workflow to the same approvers, and it's still going to result in the cutting of a check. And John will still process those all at the same time, either on Thursday or Friday, like he's doing now. But batches can be a useful grouping mechanism because, like I said, they do allow you to print reports based off of them, and I will show you what that report looks like as we go through. So first, actually, give me 1 second. I'm going to just make sure, speaking of workflow, that I have it set so it goes to me instead of to Caroline for right now. Or I'm sorry, it goes to me instead of John right now. Okay. So for right now, I'll just have you watch. You don't need to actually enter anything. Just like with the requisitions, I'll do it first, and then I will go back through it with you. So the first thing I'm going to do on this screen is just click on Add Batch. It's going to come up with the next available batch number, the effective date for the batch, the year and period, that's going to be automatic. The funds and cash account, that's also automatic. You never want to change those. This is the warrant or check run field. You can leave that blank. John is going to assign a check run at the time that he goes to actually process checks. So just leave this part blank. And then the due date, you can leave it at, if you know what the date of the check cut is going to be, you can change it to that. You could also leave it at today's date, or if there's a due date on the invoice. What John's going to use, he has his own program where he's going to go in and just kind of see all of the posted invoices that are sitting out there, and he's going to process them. So he should still see them regardless of the due date. But for just kind of keeping things clean, if you do know the date of the next check cycle, which is usually the next upcoming Thursday or Friday, I would put in that date. So most of these are automatic. You don't really have to change much on the screen other than possibly your due date. And then you have your invoice count, which is going to tell you how many invoices you have processed in this batch. The amount total, which will tell you the dollar amount total for all of the invoices put together. Vendor hash is a number that uses the vendor number to kind of verify the invoices that are in the batch. It's not really used by a whole lot of people. I think there's some entities in Massachusetts that still use it, but other than that, you guys really don't have to worry about this. And then the release status of the batch. So we can actually release the whole batch at once, or we can release individual invoices. So this one is the only release field on the financial side of Munis, where it will say, instead of just either released or pending, it's going to either say none released, some released, or all released. So if it says some released, then that just means that you released a couple of invoices from the batch, but not all of them yet. And I'll discuss this more as we go through, but I typically recommend releasing invoices as you do them as opposed to releasing the whole batch at the end, because that's going to make it a lot easier for John to be able to take the time to look through and make sure that the invoice details match, and just approve that and get it ready for the check cutting process. Are there any questions on this batch header screen?
I have a question for you, Elisa.
Sure.
So every time somebody goes in and add a batch, is that going to be a different batch for every person that goes in and do that?
Yes, people will only work in their own batches.
Is there going to be like a new batch for every single invoice?
So again, you can do it however you want to. The batches don't really matter. I always recommend doing one batch per week or one batch per check cutting cycle. So per person. So if I'm going in on Monday, I would start my new batch, put the due date as Thursday or Friday. And then I would close out that batch on Thursday or Friday, come in again and start a new batch on Monday. Does that make sense? But then you would be doing the same thing, so you'd have your own batch for that week. Neil would have his own, Patricia would have her own. Everybody has their own batch that lasts for the week.
Okay, so they can go back in and add more invoices to their batch.
Yes, absolutely. The only time that you can't is if you release and post the whole batch, and then that batch is going to be gone and you'll have to start with a new one. But if you have like 20 invoices in the batch and you release 15 of them, you can come back in and add more invoices to that batch.
Thank
Do
you.
they all have to be invoices to the same vendor or?
Nope.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on the batch header?
I don't process a lot of invoices. Must I use a batch or can I do them one at a time?
So you would still use a batch. In your case, you might only have one invoice per batch then, and that's completely fine. You could just release the whole batch at once. The batch, when it gets to John, he's not even going to really look at the batch. What he's going to look at is just the invoice number, the document number, which is a unique identifier, and then just like the vendor and the amount. The batch is more of a grouping mechanism for your benefit to be able to look at reports and see all of the invoices that you've entered for the week together. And if that's only one or two, that's completely fine.
Alyssa, if I have a invoice in the batch and maybe I forgot and I tried to insert the same invoice again, would it allow me or would it read that it's pending?
So it will tell you if you try to enter in that same invoice number, it will not allow for you to enter in the duplicate, and it will tell you that that invoice number already exists.
Will it go just off the invoice number, or because what if two different vendors for some reason would have the same invoice number?
So if it's two different vendors, then that's different. It'll go off the vendor and the invoice number. And then the other piece that it goes off of is the PO. So if the PO's already been closed or processed, you'll be able to tell pretty quickly. And I'll show you what I mean. So what I'm going to do is click on accept here, and it's going to take me into my next screen. And this is why we do the POs first, because now what I can do is go into my PO field. If I know the PO number and it's sitting right on top of the invoice, that's perfect. I can just type in the PO number. Since we're just kind of doing training for today and I don't actually have a physical invoice sitting in front of me, I'm going to pick the one that I did this morning, use my fields help to find them. Once I've picked the invoice and I start to tab down, it's going to come up with the information for me. So if this PO, if I'd already entered the invoice against this purchase order, then it would not allow me to select that purchase order, and I would know right away that that invoice has already been processed. If it was a blanket, then I would still be able to look at the open amount. And in that case, if I typed in the same document number for that same vendor, on the same PO, then it will definitely tell me this has already been entered. Duplicates are not allowed. Does that make sense? Okay, so you'll see it came up with the open amount. If there's a receiving record, how this morning we did receiving, I can also see that in the little yellow folder. It's automatically coming up with my vendor and the correct address. This document number is just going to be a climbing system number. So it's a unique way to identify the invoice because, like you said, sometimes you might have two vendors who have the same invoice number. This number will always climb and you can't duplicate it regardless of vendor. It's just a system generated number, so it'll help you to find the invoice. So far all I've had to enter is my PO number. The next thing I'm going to have to enter is just the invoice number from the vendor, and then I will enter in the gross amount. So in this case, I only ordered one item. This isn't a blanket, so I'm just going to end up fully closing this PO. So I'll type in the total amount on my invoice, and hopefully it matches the open amount up here. We do allow for small discrepancies, so if there was shipping, I believe it's 10% or like $50, whatever comes first is the threshold. So you can have minor discrepancies without having to do a change order. If it's a major discrepancy, then you will have to go in and update it to include the freight. So PO number, invoice number, gross amount, those are my three major things that I'm going to have to change. If there's a discount, I can put that in. That's an optional field for me. Payment method is going to default based on what the vendor is. Normal is just a printed check. In the future, the city will move to do EFT payments. So that will include the check and wire number, but you don't have to worry about that for right now. The description, this description will show up on the check to the vendor. So if you wanted to change it from office supplies to something more specific, you can. It's up to you what you want to put on there, but just keep in mind that will print on the stub. Then we have our status, approved. Voucher number is another way to group your invoices together. So if you had invoices even within a batch that you wanted to group together, they were all on one voucher from the same vendor, you can use this voucher number. Just make sure that all of the invoices that you want grouped together share the same one. And you'll be able to run a voucher report based on this. That is an optional field, so if you're not using that, you can keep going. Warrant, again, you don't have to worry about. That is something that John will assign at the time that he goes to cut the checks. And then we have our 3 dates. So the invoice date is the date that's printed on the invoice. The receive date is the date that you got it emailed to you or got it from the physical mail. And then the due date is just the date that it's due. And it will say that on the invoice, so you can just type that in. Again, you could just put this as the next upcoming Thursday. This number will actually default to whatever you put in on that first screen, the batch header screen that we discussed. The department number is also going to automatically populate from the purchase order. Work order and work order task you are not using at this time, so you can leave that blank. Allocation code you're also not using at this time, so you can leave blank. That is the automatic system that divides amounts by a certain percentage between a set number of accounts. And then we have our requisition number, which again will automatically populate. And then this field right here we had discussed. So this is the point at which we can change the liquidation method on the invoice. So if I had said I want to liquidate this by line on my purchase order, then it will default to that. But if I want to do it by account and amount, then I can switch this over to accounts. And not for right now, I'm going to keep it at line, but when we go to do our blankets, I will show you how to do it by account. So what I'm going to do next, or actually, I'm sorry, a few more fields I want to talk about first. Separate check. So in Munis, if I have 40 or 50 invoices to the same vendor, they are all going to go on the same check. If for some reason I know that I want this invoice to be on its own separate check, I can select this button and it will cause this invoice to go on its own check. Include documentation will cause this check to print at the end of the check run so that John can quickly and easily pull it out and know that there's something that needs to be attached to it. PA applied stands for project accounts applied. And then release just tells me that I've sent it into workflow. And then we also have a comments field where you can put invoice comments if you would like. So once I'm done with all of these fields, I can either click accept or tab through, and it's going to take me to my purchase order liquidation. So if this was a blanket or if I was doing a partial receiving on this, I could click on modify, update the amount that I've received and the liquidated dollar amount, and it will do that partial receiving for me. However, if this is something where I'm receiving the full amount like I'm doing with this laptop, all I have to do when I get to this screen is just click on full liquidate. And it's just letting me know that I had PO receiving records in the system.
Lisa, I have a question for you.
Sure.
How do we know it's a blanket PO?
So usually whoever is entering the invoice will be the person that entered in the PO, but you'll probably be able to tell by a few different things. So when I go to enter in the PO number and if I see the open amount, usually I'll be able to see right away that it's like a very large amount. The other thing that you can do if you're not sure is to go to PO Central and just check and verify.
Okay, can you go over that voucher part thing? Because I know we have a vendor that we have like 40 invoices and they're like 520, like really low amounts. And then we just cut one check for that vendor. And I just want to make sure that we can use something easier instead of entering all of them at the same time.
Oh, you don't even have to use the voucher number for them to print on the same check. If you enter, no matter how many invoices you enter to the same vendor, as long as they're all to the same vendor, I think it's up to like 200 of them, they will all print on the same check. You don't have to do anything fancy for that to happen. In fact, it's the opposite. If you want them to print on a separate check is when you'd have to check something off. The voucher is just a separate grouping mechanism. If I wanted to be able to run a report off of a particular group of invoices, I could either use the voucher number or just put them in their own special batch. Does that make sense?
Okay, Thank you.
You're welcome. So once I click on my full liquidate button, it's going to take me back to this screen, and you'll notice my accounts are highlighted. So all it's really doing is just asking me to verify that this is going to the correct account. Again, this is going to pull from the purchase order, so you're going to want the account to match. If for some reason it doesn't, you'd want to go back to your PO and do a change order to make sure the accounts match. Otherwise, you're going to have an encumbrance to one account and a liquidation to a different account, and that would just kind of be a little bit messy. So you'll want to make sure that these match. In 99% of cases, they should match automatically already. So I'm going to click on accept, and that's it. So now my invoice is done. The only other thing that I'm going to do is now I can just add any attachments that I have to this invoice. So I would click on my attach at the top. Again, that's the little paper clip. Go into my TCM, and you can see I actually already have the purchase order attached to this invoice. And now I can scan in my invoice. I can just drag and drop it from my email if I want to. I don't even have to save it. I can just pick and pull it. Or if you have it on a scanner, like if you have a physical copy that was sent in the mail, you can click on the scan icon, and you'll have to download the plugin the very first time that you do it. But after that, it should be set up so that it talks to whatever your local scanner is. So once you have that entered and it's scanned in, then the next thing to do would just be to release the invoice. Does that make sense?
So when we release that invoice, that means it's going to be in the inbox, right, for somebody else to approve it?
Yep, it will go right to John's inbox so that he can approve that, and also so that he knows that the invoices are coming in and need to be paid for checks.
Okay.
So by doing the purchase order first, it makes it super simple for you because the system is able to pull in 90% of the information. It just asks that you verify the amount because, again, sometimes we have a discrepancy, and then just plugging in that invoice number and then possibly any dates that you have. With the blankets, it is going to be a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is show you how to do one with a blanket. And let me see. So I'm just going to click on add. I don't have to go back through my batch screen. I'm already in my batch. And now I can go into the PO. And let's see. Okay, so here's a different one from this morning. So I don't think this one was intended to be a blanket, but it had, I know this one had a lot of lines, like 8 or 9 lines. So it would be the same thing for the most part as the last one. I just put in the PO number, tab through, and now I can do my gross amount. So in this case, I'm actually going to take a look at this PO first. I don't necessarily, I won't need to when I'm actually having the invoice in front of me, but because I don't have the invoice in front of me, I just want to make sure that what I type in matches. So let me see.
Lisa, I'm sorry, but I have another question for you.
Sure.
Is there any way that we can put like a B or something right next to that PO so we know it's a blanket, so we can flag those POs?
So we can't do, we can't put a letter in the field. It's only numeric. You could put blanket in the description on the requisition and it will carry through and you'll be able to see it right there. Okay, so on this PO, it just has multiple lines. So this one, I'm just gonna put in $5 to pay that out so that I can keep using it. So for my gross amount, I'm going to do 5. Discount date, I can leave blank. This is all going to be automatic. Again, I can change the description if I want to. This I'll leave blank for John. I can change my dates if I need to. Department is automatic based on the rec. The requisition number. And now this is where I can pick by line or by account. I'm still going to do line for this one just so I can show you what it looks like when you have multiple lines and you're only closing one line out. So I'm going to keep going. And it's going to take me to this screen, and now you can see all of my different lines. And so here's the first line that I saw that I'm going to liquidate. And so in this case, instead of doing full liquidate, what I'm going to do is click on modify. And so my received quantity is going to be 1. There was only 1 ordered. And the liquidated amount is going to be 5. So then the invoice number will therefore be 5, and that's going to match what's on my front screen. So that's all I have to do, just match what's on the invoice from the vendor to what's on here, click accept, and then click on continue. And it's going to take me down. It automatically pulls the account from the correct line. I will verify that it is correct and click on accept. Are there any questions on how to partially liquidate an invoice? I'm going to do that one more time using the same PO number, but I'm going to do the by account this time. So next I'm going to put in just a random invoice number. And then I'll do my gross amount. So let me see what other line items I have here. So let me do 120 for this one. And this time I'm going to change liquidation method from line to account. And now when it takes me to this screen, you can see the different Oregon object codes. So the one that I'm using for this one is this right here, this 5407. So I'm again just going to click on modify, go down to the account that I want to use, and it's the one, I think it's the 4108, yep. So I will just do 120, and then once I tab, it'll update with the invoice amount, click accept, continue. And so that liquidating by the GL line makes it really simple and easy to liquidate your blankets. So again, just double checking the account. I can just click accept from the screen, upload any attachments, and then I'm done. Let me turn this off because you guys aren't using that right now. So is that making sense so far?
Yes, I do have, I'm a little worried about reconciliation process with the reports, but maybe we can talk about that later.
Okay. Yes, we can definitely talk about that. I think that Payment Manager will allow John to pull everything in, but I'll show you that at the end when we have time. So what I'm going to do now is have everybody enter invoices for their PO that they did this morning. I'm going to have you do it for your blanket purchase order. So If you don't know what your purchase order number is, what we're going to do first is go back to the Tyler Hub menu, and let me just refresh so that I start from scratch. And so what we'll do is go back to the requisition screen. So I'm going to go to financials, purchasing, purchase order processing, and then requisitions. And so once you're in here, you can do an advanced search. And I'll just do this. You can just click on search and all the ones for your department should show up. And then you can find the one that you did. Make sure that it's your blanket that you did. And so you'll be able to kind of tell by the requisition. Your PO number will be right over here.
When I hit advanced search and then search, it brings up Department 74 public property, that there's 2 there. It doesn't bring up the ones I did.
Okay, so let me see. I'm gonna have to check your permissions. Let me see if I can find yours. What department was yours under?
54. I have the Granger.
I'm having the same issue, and I'm also wastewater.
Okay.
And I have no requisitions found when I search.
Okay, just a moment. I'm not seeing any for 54.
Oh, well, it'll be 44. I wasn't sure where. Yeah, it was sewage treatment.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. And you said Granger?
Yeah, that was one of mine. I did Granger and I have MedEd.
Which one was your blanket?
Granger.
Okay. Yeah, let me do it this way. Okay, so then your PO number is right here. Do you see that one?
Yes.
Okay. And then I heard 2 other people say that they couldn't find theirs either. So who was that again?
That was Ann for 44.
Okay. And so yours was 44, and do you know what vendor?
Staples.
Is it this one right here?
Yes.
Okay. So just make sure you write down that number. And then I heard one other person as well.
It was me, it's Shelley. Even when I have the number, it says that it cannot be found.
Okay, so let me try finding yours. So what division was it? Shelley, do you know what division
Sorry,
you're?
somehow I got muted. It's under a city clerk. I'm not sure what the number is.
Okay. Do you remember the vendor?
I do not. I
Okay.
just picked a random one because mine aren't in there yet.
That's okay. Was it one of these?
The blanket was the legal fees.
Okay, so just write that number down somewhere if you can.
Yeah, I did, but when I put that number in on my account, it says it's not found.
So I'm gonna have you write it down somewhere else. I know it's not showing up in requisitions right now. I'm gonna have to check that, but I want you to write it down so that we can try and see if it works in the invoice entry screen.
All right, I got it.
Okay. So I'm going to, does anyone else need help finding their requisition or their PO? Okay, I'm gonna close out of here. And I'm gonna go back to invoice entry and I'm gonna start on this screen. So was everybody able to get to invoice entry? This is the trail to get here if you're not there yet. Okay, so once you're in invoice entry, yours should all be blank right now. I'm going to have everybody click on add batch. And then again, most of this is gonna populate for you. The only thing that you might wanna change is just the due date, but everything else can stay the same. And then I'm gonna have you click on accept.
So it stays at treasury, it doesn't go to general or anything like that?
Yes, that's not actually Treasury Department fund. Treasury, what that's referring to is a pooled cash. So all of the funds will transfer money into that one Treasury fund where it's going to get paid out for the checks.
Okay, so then we shouldn't have to put anything in the fund or the cash account or anything like that, right?
Nope, that's always going to be 00.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. So next thing I'm going to have you do is just type in your PO number. And a lot of this information should come up for you on its own. The vendor address, document number will automatically populate for you. And then you can just make up an invoice number.
My document number, it's grayed out.
Yes, so you would need permission to change the document number. Most people will not have permission to change that because we want to keep it consistent. So everybody should be grayed out.
Okay, so it's not supposed to display anything then?
Nope.
Okay.
So you can just make up an invoice number, and then since you're doing a blanket, you can make up a gross amount. Just make sure that it's less than your open amount.
Should it be throwing an error message up when I try to put an invoice number in?
What's the error message saying?
Account restrictions exist for one or more GL accounts on the PO.
Okay, is there a way for you to take a screenshot of that and send it to me and IT in an email?
Yep.
Okay, it's gonna be your permissions. You probably just don't have the correct accounts. Are you one of the people that is on board with your accounts, or I know that org needs to be corrected.
No,
What-
that's me. That's Shelley.
Yeah, what do you mean on board?
On the board department. Like if that was your GL account, but I don't think that was you. I think that
It's
was
not. That's Shelley. It's me.
Yeah.
And I'm getting all kinds of errors, so I'll have to just follow along.
okay.
Yeah, no, this is Cheryl.
Okay, so I'm going to hang on. Let me see if I can have each of you share your screen first. So Cheryl, I'll have you go first. I just made you a presenter, so you should be able to share. So click on OK. Oh, I think you're using the same PO as me. That's why. So you're going to want to make sure that you're using your purchase order from this morning.
I am.
So that's not your purchase order.
My $6,000 blanket order for Staples, yes, it is.
Hang on, I'll check. Let me check PO Central or requisitions, because that one is one of the ones that I initially, that PO is the very first one that I entered in, and it was,
Yeah, it's right here. This was mine.
I don't know why it's giving you the same PO number. It should have its own unique PO number. Hang on a second. Why is it giving you that one? Did you do 2 requisitions this morning?
Yep.
And that's the second one that you did?
Actually, I think I only did one. I think I only did a purchase. I think I only did a blanket.
You only did one this morning?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so if that's the one that went with the very first, like if that's the first one that you did when everybody was doing theirs, what happened was I had to do a manual conversion from the requisition to the PO just because I'm not Tammy. So when I was doing that manual conversion, something happened because not everybody put a vendor on theirs. And so I had to do a merge and split process, and it ended up merging a lot of them together. So I think what's happening is there's multiple requisitions that are tied to the one PO, and they all have different accounts on them. So while you have access to that GL account right there, because that's the police one, there's other accounts on there that might be from city clerk or city council. And so that's why it's giving you a permission error. So
Do you want me just to create another one?
another PO or another requisition? Yeah, you can if you want to. I can approve it for you and get it converted. If you do it while I help Shelly and whoever else is having their issues, then I can convert it after.
Nope, that works.
Okay, so Shelly, do you want to share next?
I will try. Can you see that?
Yes, it's extremely zoomed in though. It looks like you just shared part of your screen. Do you want to stop sharing and try again?
Is that any better?
It's kind of doing the same thing, but
Yeah, I haven't chat. So what can you see the PO number?
yes.
That's the one that we wrote down.
Yep.
Nothing fills in, and down at the bottom there, I don't know if you can see, it says no records exist for this PO.
So that's receiving records. So put your clicker on the PO number again, and then click on tab on your keyboard. You must add an existing purchase order. Click OK.
And then that's what it does.
There might be, let me see, there might be an extra 0 in there, or not enough zeros. Hang on. Oh, you know what? I think that's the requisition number, not the PO. Yours is actually, instead of 58, change it to 05. There you go. Was that the right one?
Yes.
Okay, so you just had the requisition number instead of the PO number, that's all. Okay, and I think there was one other person that was having issues as well. Was everybody else okay on theirs? All right, perfect. And I just got this one, so let me just convert this requisition to a PO and then I will continue on. Okay, and so Cheryl, your new PO number is right here, the 21 4 zeros and then 13.
Okay, your screen's not shared anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, it's because everyone else was sharing theirs. Can you see now?
Yes.
Okay. So, let me get back to my invoice entry screen. And were you able to take that down as well?
Yes.
Okay. So far what we've done on the invoice entry screen, we added our batch. We just didn't really change anything, clicked accept. Came into this screen, entered our PO number, and then tabbed down until we got to our invoice number field and made up an invoice number. The next thing that we're going to do is just type in our gross amount. Since you all have done blankets, you can just put in whatever amount you would like to into the gross. Mine is technically not a blanket, so I'm just going to pick something here. And then you can just keep hitting tab on your keyboard. Again, these fields, the discounts and everything, you can use if you want some practice with them, but you don't have to. Payment method, you will leave the same. The description will default for you. You can change it if you want something different to print on the check. And then we have our status, that's automated. Voucher, you can change if you want to. Warrant, you can leave blank. The dates, you can make up dates if you want to. So if you wanted to put an invoice date and a receive date on here, just keep in mind that the invoice date will have to be equal to or prior to the receive date. It can't be after, otherwise you'll get a warning. And then the due date, you can just put either today's date, leave it the same, or set it to like this upcoming Thursday. You can keep clicking on tab to get through here. Department, you can keep the same. We're not using any of these fields right here. Requisition will populate for you on its own. And from the liquidation method, I want you to click on account.
When I'm trying to tab, it won't let me tab anything else. Like it goes from gross, I hit tab, it goes discount, and then right back up to gross. And I can't change the dates or anything.
Okay, do you want to share your screen again and I'll see why it's doing that?
Okay, go tab, goes right back. I think I go and change the date.
You have 2 decimals in the gross, that's why. So you have 752.85.00.
There we go. That works.
Okay, so let me switch back. Okay, so make sure that your liquidation says account. And was everybody able to get to this point where it says account? Does anyone have any other questions before I tab to the next screen?
Alyssa, I press enter before changing my method instead of pressing tab. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So what you can do is click on continue and it should take you back to this screen. Did it take you back?
No, I don't see continue.
Okay, let me make you a presenter and I'll have you share your screen. Okay, try sharing now. Okay, so let's see. Oh, you're okay, so just click on reliquidate or actually, no, click on back. And then click on update. And see if you can tab over to liquidation method. Let me see. Okay, you should still be okay. Try clicking on reliquidate again and see if we can do it. You can still do yours by line. It's just going to be a little different. Let's see. Oh yeah, so that'll still work for you if you do it that way.
Should I continue then?
Yeah, you can hit continue and you'll be okay. Once you hit continue, it should take you down to your lines anyway, and so if you need to change them from the screen, you still can.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. And so I have this set by account, so I'm going to continue to tab until I get to this screen. And you can see I have all my different accounts that are associated with this PO. And so now what I'm going to do, and I'll have you all do, is click on modify. and just update the account that you want to update with the amount. And just make sure that whatever you put on the front screen, which will be this net invoice amount right here, matches the total of what you put on this screen. And it'll tell you, because once you start typing, the totals will be down here. So even if you have 3 or 4 different lines that you want to put amounts on, it will calculate as well. So really you're just making sure that this total matches these two totals. So once you are done with this piece and you've typed in the amounts that you want for each account, then you can click on accept. And once you clicked on accept and everything grays out, the next button that you can click on is going to be continue. And again, it will just take you down to your accounts. Make sure that you have the correct ones on here. Everything looks good, and now you can click on accept. And now all you have to do for this invoice is just make sure that you have done your attachments. It's going to take you to a screen that looks like this. You can just click on add to queue. You guys aren't using the label printer right now. It might not take you to that depending on your permissions anyway, so let's see.
I got an error that says available cash amount of negative 246 exceeded.
Yep, that's okay. You can hit continue. That's because we haven't done your budget import yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so is everybody able to successfully enter their invoice?
No, I was not. I received an error message.
What does your
saying,
error message
No
say?
invoice available. Check user role and data access permissions.
No invoice available? Okay, I'm gonna have you share your screen if you can.
Can't do that.
You can't share?
Nope.
Hang on, let me try and change your thing again. Okay, now is it letting you?
Yeah, I don't see the error. Same thing you did.
When you maximize the screen, it disappears.
But then always minimize is not showing. There it is, minimize. There it is, maximize.
Your screen is different. Your settings.
Yeah.
And Helen, I saw that you had the same, you're having an error as well. Is it the same error that Neil described?
Not sure. It says error executing insert audit, something like that online. Not sure what that is.
Error inserting what?
Executing insert audit details.
Okay, so I'll have Neil share. Are you still unable to share, Neil?
I can't share. I can't find that arrow. Whether I
Okay,
minimize the
so
screen or maximize, I can't.
would you be able to take a screenshot of your screen and then send it to me and Ken in an email? And then Helen, while he's getting a screenshot and sending it, I'll have you share your screen.
Okay. You see my screen?
Now I can.
No?
Yes, I can now.
Oh, okay. I hear it.
So can you actually, are you able to take a screenshot from that and send it to me? I don't think that's a permission error. It almost looks like it's something with the audit record.
Okay.
And then can you click on, do you see the red button at the top that says invoice audits?
Yes.
Yeah, can you click on that? No audit records found. So it's giving you the same. I wonder if you had clicked on that one before and that's why it was.
No, I didn't click on invoice audits at all.
Okay, so it looks like that one had an issue saving audit information. Can you try clicking on release invoice and see if it will allow you to do that? It's the pink button. It's like 3 over from the red button you just clicked.
Okay.
Okay, so it does allow you to release it, so that seems like it's good. So if you can send that screenshot to me and Ken, we will look into that. The screenshot of the error that you got.
Okay. Not sure how to go back to that.
Can you click on invoice audits again?
Oh. Now I went here.
Oh, okay, so you do have an audit record then. Okay, if it happens again, then take a screenshot and send it to us.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, and just let me, I need to check something real quick.
Is there a way to scan this in? And then like make adjustments to it?
Yeah, it changes to a PDF. The only way around that is to have, if you have like the special Adobe after that, where you can modify PDFs.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so the next step, if you haven't already done so, what you can do is just release that invoice, and that will send the invoice up to John.
When you're on this page, is that where you attach an invoice?
Yes, so right from here, I can go to my attachments, and you can actually still do this even if your invoice has been released. You can still go to the attachments. So it is that, I don't know if you saw, it's the little paperclip icon right
Yeah,
here.
I saw that. I just wasn't sure if I missed that spot or if I could do it here.
Oh yeah, you can. I'm actually gonna have everyone try to do that now. So if everybody can click on this attachment, the paperclip with the yellow circle, it should take you to a screen that looks like this. And then once they are in the TCM, I'm going to have you click on Create New Document, which is just the little plus up at the top left. If you hover over it, it says Create New Document. And so once I've done that, it's going to come up with different options. So I can either choose Invoice Affidavit, check the invoice itself, attachment, or PO. I'm going to have you click on AP Invoice because that's going to be the most common one that you do. And then it will have you click on Invoice again. Once you do that, I'll have you click on Import Attachment. And you can either try dragging and dropping something from your email, or you can click on Choose File and find something that you have.
Where was that at?
Do you mean this?
I had the main screen, and it had created the new document, and then where was the invoice attached?
So after you do Create
Yeah, I
New
have a screen
Document,
that looks like that.
then click on the Import. Okay, and then Choose File. And this is where you can upload whatever you want to upload. Once you've picked a file to upload, you can just click on Import. Depending on what you've uploaded, it may show in this screen. Was anybody not able to get into the TCM or get to this screen? Like, did anybody get an error trying to get in, or was everybody okay?
Okay. What happens if you upload the wrong thing by accident? I'm not seeing a delete part.
There should be a little trash can right here. If there's not, it's because you just don't have permissions, and we can fix that. So just send me an email about that as well. And put Ken's name on it as well. So once you've uploaded the document that you want, you can just click on this little floppy disk looking icon to save it. And now I can see the documents that I have attached to this record, and I also have related documents. So this also includes the purchase order images as well. So if I were to click on the PO image, for example, I can actually see an image of what that printed PO would look like. When you're done, there's an X button at the top right that says close viewer. I'll just have you click on that and you can get out of this screen. Okay, so was everybody comfortable with the process of entering an invoice? I know practice will probably be needed, but just for right now, for first time's sake, was anybody having any questions or concerns? How are we all feeling? Good? Okay, there's
Hold on. Is it gonna, like, from that screen, where can you see what's attached?
so you can go right back to that paperclip. And
Okay.
if I go back in here, it'll show me all of my attachments.
Okay.
Yep. All right, so a few features that I want to talk about. We have our reliquidate button, which will take us back into the liquidation screen, where we can either do a full liquidate or a modify. We also have change lines, which will take us back down to our accounts if we need to change any information down here. If we need to update basic information, we have our update. We also have a quick entry screen, and what quick entry does is it takes off some of those fields that we don't need to use every single time, and it just limits it to just the required fields pretty much. So if you're not going to be entering in discounts, this is a faster way in which you can enter invoices. If you want to switch back to the regular or full entry mode, you would just click on the button at the top again. Now it says full entry. I'm going to skip this one for just a second. There is also PO inquiry, so if I need to see details about my purchase order, I can go to PO inquiry and it will take me to that purchase order's details. View address will give me the full vendor remit address, so I can see it right here, but if it was longer and I needed to see more detail, I can click on this button to do so. Journal info will take me to the accounting information. This button you don't need to worry about, that's subcontractor payments. Credit contract is if you were going to do an invoice that's crediting a contract, and all you'd have to do is the same exact thing that you did right now, except it would be a negative amount in the gross amount. Then we have our additional info, which is just going to be 1099 information that will primarily be used by John and Caroline. You have your notes that you can put in. Invoice audits is going to give you an audit trail of who's entered what, who's changed what on this invoice and when. You also have a duplicate button, so if you have similar invoices, you can work by using the duplicate and just change the invoice number and the amount. You also have a void button if you need to void the invoice. You can also, if it hasn't been released yet, just delete it. Release invoice to send this up to John. Suspend invoice, so if for some reason you need to put a hold on the payment, you wanted to enter it, but you don't want it to be paid yet, you can suspend it. And update 1099 box code, again, that's going to be used primarily by John and Caroline. The one that I skipped over, group entry, There is an option using group entry to enter multiple invoices at once against the same PO. So if you had a situation where you do have a blanket and you wanted to quickly enter in the invoices against that blanket, all you'd have to do is click on add, enter in the PO number that you want to use, and then once you tab down here, all you're going to need to type in is each invoice number and the gross amount for each. Next invoice number, next amount, and you would just do that for however many invoices the vendor has sent you. So when you get 10 or 20 invoices against that same blanket PO all at once, this is just a faster way to be able to enter them. Does that make sense? Okay, so a few other things. That's it for this particular, the invoice entry screen, but there are some things on this batch entry screen that I wanted to show you. We've already gone over add batch. If I click on view batch, it will give me a listing of all of the invoices that I have in my batch. If I click on resume, it will take me to the last invoice in the batch, and I can just keep on adding. Release batch will release all of the invoices in the batch at once. I can also use mass release to select a grouping of invoices from the batch to release at once. So if I have 50 invoices in the batch, but I only want to release 40, I can select all 40 of those quickly from here instead of clicking release 40 times. Output post you will never have to use on this screen. What's going to happen is once John gives his approval, it will automatically post. Then we have warrant posts. So this one you actually won't use either. It's the same thing as post, except you're posting by this warrant field. Again, that would be something for John. Sort will let you sort how you want the invoices to print. Invoice find allows you to find a specific invoice number. Again, quick entry will take you to entering invoices with just the basic required fields. Group entry is one that we already went over. Change year and period. This will change the year and period of every invoice in the batch. Single check, I don't think you guys are ever going to really use. That is it's an option for, say you had a handwritten check and you just wanted to get the check details into Munis. You could just use single check to type in the details of that physical handwritten check, and it will allow you to do that. Voucher print, this is the report that we can print using the voucher number, so I want to show you what this looks like. And so I'm just going to display it as a PDF. And so I only had one invoice on this voucher, but it's going to list out the accounts, the PO number, the invoice document number, invoice date, due date, and the amount totals for that particular voucher. So this would be a nice way to group, like if you have a batch with 100 invoices, but 20 of them are to one vendor, you can group them by this voucher number, and it will allow you to print a report based on the voucher number as opposed to the batch. So I got a question, how do I get back into a batch? So if you want to find your batch, you can go to the search icon at the top in your toolbar. And so if you know your batch number, you can type it in. You could also type in your username, and it should come up with all of the batches that are associated with your user. So here's my batch. I'm going to click on accept. And so now it's taking me to my batch header. And from here, I have a couple different options. I can either click on resume and it's going to take me to the last invoice in the batch, or I can click on view batch and it will show me a listing of every invoice that's in the batch, and I can pick the one that I want.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? There were sirens going by and I couldn't follow along.
Oh, yep, that's okay. So to find the batch itself, you would go back to invoice entry and then click on the search icon at the top left of your toolbar. And you can either, if you know the batch number, type it in, or you can use your username. Click accept, and it's going to show you all of your batches that are associated with your user. You can double click on the one that you want. And then from here, you have two options. You can either click on resume to go to the last invoice in the batch, or click on view batch, and you will see all of the invoices that are within the batch so that you can find the one that you want.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to have everybody resume their batch, or if you're already on this invoice entry screen, you're in good shape. And I'm just going to have you click on this right here, the release invoice. And that is what's going to send it up to John. And I will see, because I have it set to go to me as well. Maybe I changed it, hold on. Oh, okay, so it will likely just go to approved automatically then. So I'm going to let me see, hold on. It's doing something funny with the workflow. I can't remember if I changed all of the workflows for today so that I could approve things, but I don't know what I did with this one. Saying that it's already approved. Okay, so I'm going to show you what a batch report looks like. And so I can either do that by output posting, or I can click on my PDF button right here. The PDF is at the top of your batch. And so I'm going to check all of these off just so that you can see what they look like. And so this is what a batch report would look like. The first page is going to show you the purchase order, liquidation, and receiving. The second page is going to show you the invoice entry and proof list. So here's my various invoices. And then the third page is going to show me the accounts that I have that are being paid. And then finally, this fourth page, I'm sorry, not finally, but the fourth page is going to show me some account information that accounting and finance would use. So it's showing me the entry for the liquidation of the purchase order. And then down here, it's just showing me the listing of the funds and control account. So again, that would just be for finance and accounting's use. Okay, so now I can output and post the batch. When I do that, I'm going to want to save this report. And I'm going to save it as a PDF. You don't need to do this. You'll never need to do this. I'll do it for you. But there will come times where you're going to want to save things in Munis, and it will be the same exact screen that you're looking at now. So usually what I have everyone do is just put your initials at the end of the file name so that if somebody else is saving the exact same file as you, it won't come up with the same name. Otherwise, it'll give you an error and say that you can't overwrite somebody else's. I also always like to change the save as type to PDF and click on OK. And so I'm going to post this. Again, you don't ever have to worry about posting the invoices, but I do want to show you how to save a report and where that will go to. So that report is going to go under my username in the My Reports. And so here's my invoice entry proof list. And this is just the same report that I had showed you a moment ago. It's just that I saved it when I actually posted. But all that you'll have to do, again, is just release, and then John will take it from there. The only time you'll have to touch it again is if something's wrong with it and you need to go back and make changes. So does anyone have any questions up until this point before we transition?
I'm sorry, I do have a question. So when we release the invoice or release the batch, what's the difference between those two?
So either one will work. If you release your batch, then you're saying that you're done with that batch and you're going to start a new one. Releasing the invoice will allow you to keep working in the same batch. It doesn't really matter how you do it, but my one recommendation to you, don't wait and do invoices all week and then send them at the very end of the week, especially if you're somebody that has a high volume of invoices, because that's just going to be a lot for John to get at the end of the week. I would recommend releasing invoices as you enter them.
Okay. And then at the end of the week, just release the batch.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so why don't we do our 10-minute break? We can come back at 2:40, and then when we come back, we will work on budget transfer requests. Does that work for everybody?
Yes, Elisa.
Yes.
Okay, I will see you all at 2:40. Okay, is everyone back?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna close out of all of the screens that I was just in. And I'm just gonna go back to my main screen and refresh. Okay, and so where we're going to go next, it's still gonna be under financials. This time we're going to go under budget processing. And this is where we're going to go to do budget transfers and amendment requests. So there should be one under your menu, and I'm gonna have a lot more on this one than most of you probably do, but there should be one under budget processing called budget transfers and amendments. And I'll have you click on that, and it's just going to load up for me. Once you open the program, it should take you to a screen that looks like this. Was everyone able to get to the screen? Was anyone not able to get here? Okay, so I'm going to, just like last time, I'm going to do one first, and then I'll have you go back through, and each of you can add one. So I'm just going to click on the plus button, and just like with a lot of the other screens, a lot of the necessary information is going to show up for me by fiscal year and month. I have 2 journal reference fields that are optional. The thing to keep in mind with these, it is a good idea to standardize what you put in the reference fields because they are searchable. Then you can do a short description. So, for example, a transfer request, the effective date, the budget year code. So 1 is going to be current year, or 2 will be for next year. And you can see down at the bottom that it's telling you that. Entity code, you don't have to worry about that. We have some clients that have 2 separate charts for accounting, 2 whole separate sets of accounts. For example, if we have like a city school or a county school combo, they might have 2 separate entities, but that's not the case with you. It's always going to be one, and it will be grayed out, but just to give you some background on why it's there. Amendment type. So this is probably going to be the most confusing part. There's only going to be a small handful of these that you use. There's 8 total, but for you, I think it's going to really be 2 or maybe 3 that you're using. So a good way to remember what the different types are, if you hover over it, it does tell you. But the best way to remember what the different types are is to go up to your help screen. So the little question mark in the blue bar, and then the help icon. Once I'm in here, I can go down to my field descriptions by scrolling down. And I'm going to scroll down to the amendment type field. So this gives me kind of a brief overview. So it tells me 1 or 4 are expense account to expense account or revenue account to revenue account. 2 or 5 are expense account to revenue account. 3 or 6 are one-sided. So unless you are in accounting or finance, you will probably not be using the one-sided. And then 7 or 8, these are interfund requests. Again, those are going to be a lot less common, probably only really used by accounting and finance. So this is just telling you the difference, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 5, and 6, what the difference is between the two of those. For you guys, I foresee you using 1 and 2 probably the most. I don't think it'll be very common, if at all, that you use any of the other types. The main difference between 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, you enter the amount of the increase or decrease itself. And then 4, 5, and 6, you enter the total amount that the budget should be after the amendment takes place, if that makes sense. And then there's the amendment types that you can click on, which gets into even greater detail for you. So this will tell you, it kind of lays it out so you can see it a little better. 1 or 4, it's either decreasing an expense account and increasing an expense account, or decrease and increase a revenue. 2 and 5, same thing, increase, or I'm sorry, this is kind of the inverse. So you'd be increasing a revenue to account for an increase in an expense, or decreasing. And then 3 and 6, again, these are one-sided. They're going to be a lot less common. And then 7 or 8, this is just moving it from one fund to another. 7 is the difference between the two interfund. 7 is for revenue and 8 is for expense. And then it gives you that note about the difference between 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, and 6 down at the bottom. So with that being said, I am going to show you how to do the most common one, I think, which is going to be the type 1. And so I'm going to keep type 1 in there. This next field is one time or continuing. So if this is a entry that's going to be just kind of a one-off thing to account for extra expenditures, you could mark it as one time. If it's going to be continuing, then when you go to do your budget projection, marking this as continuing will flag it so that automatically when you go to do that projection, it will pull this up and it will bring it forward into your projection as well. I'm going to keep this one at one time for right now. And you also have your options for project accounts apply on here. So I'm going to click on accept and it's going to take me to my next screen. And before I start entering on this screen, were there any questions on the prior screen? Okay, so these first two fields we're going to skip over for today. This strictly applies to project accounts. This T stands for type, so it's either going to be an expense or a funding string, and then the project string will be the account for the project. Again, if that's something that's going to apply to you, we have a session later on for that. And then we have our org, object, and project. So you're just going to be using org and object for the time being. So what I'm going to do is I can either type in my org and object if I know it, or I can use my fields help to pick the one that I want. So I'm going to pick the org that I want, and let's say, why don't we move from contracted services to conferences and trainings? So I'm going to pick my first account. I can put in a comment if I want, as well as a reference field. I have my effective date, and then I have my I/D. So this is either going to be an increase or a decrease. So if I am taking the money out of contracted services so that I can put it into conferences and trainings, I would be decreasing the amount of money that's in contracted services and putting it into conferences and trainings. Then we have the amount. So if I'm decreasing contracted services by $1,000, I would type in that it's $1,000 decrease. And then I will tab down. And once I click tab on my keyboard, it's going to give me another line. And so for my second line, I said that I wanted to move it to conferences and trainings. And so this is the one that I'm moving it to. So it's going to be an I for increase. And you'll want to make sure that these match. So if I'm taking $1,000 out, I'm putting $1,000 in. And now I can click on accept. So that's all I really have to do for this. The other big important piece, once you have entered your accounts, is going to be to attach the documentation, the supporting documentation from council. So you have your attachment here. It's going to work the exact same way as it did when we were in requisitions and when we were in invoice entry. And Shelley, the transfer request will be made after council approval.
Yep, you answered that right as I hit the enter.
Oh, okay. I just saw it now. So you will just need to click on the plus button, upload that documentation from council, and put that through. Council doesn't really work in Munis, so they're the one exception to get the approval before you enter it. Everything else you enter it, and then it will go through the approval and get posted. So what I'm going to have everyone do is I'm going to have you all do your own budget transfer request. So if you can all get to this screen, if you're not there yet, again, it's under financials, budget processing, and then budget transfers and amendments. And it should be the screen right here. Yours will be all grayed out. There won't be anything in it yet. Once you get to this screen, you can click on the plus button. And your fiscal year and month should populate for you. The journal number will populate for you. You can use these reference fields if you want to, just to test them out. If you have additional information, they are useful. And then the short description, you can just put in whatever makes sense for your scenario. And then we have the effective date. Again, for the budget year code, I'm just going to have you put current year. And then amendment type, why don't we all do a type 1 for right now? So, and then for budget projection inclusion, just do one time, that's fine. It won't really matter for right now what one you pick. Once all of these fields have been filled out and your screen looks like mine, you can click on accept. So once you click accept, your screen should look like this. And I want you to skip right over to the field that says org. And then from your org code, you can click on the 3 dots. Yours should just come up with the orgs that you have access to use. So just pick whichever one you want to use for this scenario. And then pick an object. And then if you want to, you can put in a comment and a reference one. Those are optional. The effective date will come in based on what you put on the previous screen. And you're either going to put an I or a D. So for this one, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to do an I, and I'll put in my amount of 500. And then I'm going to go down to my next org and object. So if you want, you can use the same org, you can use a different org. Just make sure if you use a different org that it still starts with the same fund. And so it'll have to be a slightly different account. So here's my two different accounts. Put in a D for decrease. Make sure that your top amount and bottom amount match. And then once everything matches, you have your two separate accounts. You have one line that says increase and one line that says decrease. And you have two amounts that match. You can click on accept. Was everyone able to get their budget in? Okay. I am going to click on my back button and I'm going to click on release. So now I can see that it says pending approvals. And I'm an approver for this one, so I can also approve it. Are there any questions on budget transfer requests or how they work? You can feel free to type in the chat as well if that's easier.
Lisa, can you go back? I mean, I've saved it and everything, but do I have to just like release it?
Yep, the pink release button at the top, pink orange, I'm not really sure what color that is, but
Okay.
and then whoever the final approver is on this will hit the output post button. In this case, I think it's Jamar, yeah. So it'll go to, let's see. I think it goes to division department and then Michael and then Jamar. Okay, so no other questions on budget transfers and amendments? If you think of anything, you can always feel free to type in the chat as well or email me. Okay, so I do want to show you, I know we talked about reports and where they exist. Again, it's always going to be under the inquiry and reporting section of whatever financial function you're under. So the accounts payable has one, purchasing has one. But there's also your budget reports, and that's what I want to talk about is your account reports. So under financials and then general ledger menu, there is also an inquiry and reports section. And so there's a whole bunch of reports under here that you can use to check the status of your various accounts that fall under your department or division. And some of these are actually physical reports that you can print, and some of these are tools that you can use. So for example, account inquiry is a really good one for checking individual accounts and seeing records that are tied to an account. So if I go to account inquiry and then I just search, why don't I use my purchasing one since I know I have some stuff in there. And I think, why don't I try my office supply account? Okay, so for example, here is my account. If I want to, I can just search by just that org or object. There's also a segment find. Segment will let you search strictly by a department or division. And you can also search by, you know, just expenses, just revenue, whatever you need to see. What account inquiry will show you is 4 years worth of fiscal information. So I have 4 different columns here. The one all the way to the left is going to be my current year. 2021, 1 year back, is going to be next. And then I can see 2 years back on the screen with 2020. I also have a final column for 2023. So as we get close to budget prep for next year, we'll be able to see 2023 amounts once those numbers have been soft posted to the system. This is going to show you, and of course, like I said, we're still working on getting your original budget for this year in, but we have the original budget column, or row, I should say. We have your transfers in, transfers out, the revised budget after all of your transfers, your actuals, your encumbrances, and this will actually show you requisitions that you have pending as well. With all of that, it will calculate your available amount, and it will give you a percentage used based on what your budget amount is and your available. So the nice thing about this too is if I want to see, so I've got a little over $2,000 worth of actuals. If I want to see what it is that's making up those actuals, I can click on this yellow folder. And it's going to show me a listing of everything that's creating those actuals. So in this case, on this account, all I have for right now is just my invoice that I did earlier. I can see it by the source code, API, that stands for Accounts Payable Invoice. You'll get familiar with the different source codes as you move on. But I can scroll to the right and actually see the PO number, any reference numbers, the amount. If there was a check, I could see the check as well. Once this has been assigned to a check run by John, I'll be able to see that. The vendor comment, which is just in this case going to be the description of the invoice, voucher, carry forward. So I can see some pretty good details about this. If I want to drill down even further, I can double click on it, and it's going to take me to the details of that particular invoice. So I can really drill down using this program. The other cool thing that this one will show you is there is the months program. So I can see spending by months. And I can kind of see, you know, what months are we spending the most, what months are we not spending as much, to kind of get an anticipatory look of, you know, where you're expecting your spending to come from. Any questions on this program? Okay, you also have your tab for current year, which will compare to carry forward, and it gives you your gap totals as well. Your history, so if you wanted to go even further back than 2020, this history tab will give you 19, 18, 17, 16. Fair heads up in Munis, we're only going to load as far back as 2019's data. So you'll be able to see all the way back to 2019. If you need to go further back than that, the legacy system or the old system that you guys were on, you'll still have that strictly for being able to look at history for a while. This also provides a 4-year graph, which is nice to be able to kind of compare, as well as a history graph, which right now we only have 1 year, so it's not really going to show me much. So that's account inquiry. We also have account central and account overview. So account central, for example, I can search either by a particular fund, org, or object, or I can do advanced search. And let's say I want to search by a particular department. Why don't we search by finance? And it's going to show me all of my accounts that fall under whatever criteria I've searched for. And I can see the type, my revised budget, my actuals, encumbrances available, and percentage used. I can also, from this screen, get an Excel report. So if I wanted to pull these all up, I can very quickly generate an actual physical report that I can manipulate and play with the amounts in Excel. And so this is just kind of reflective of what I showed on the last screen. Again, these hyperlinks will actually take you to the account itself, so long as you have permission to see it. Okay, so we have account central and then accounts overview. Okay, so in this one, it's going to start off, this one will just show the various funds. Again, I can see original, revised, actuals, encumbrances, etc. It will actually link me out to Account Central, but then over to the left, I can actually drop this down and start drilling down to whatever it is that I want to see. So under the general funds, I can then see all of the different accounts that exist. You get to some expenses. Okay, and so I have my different object codes that, or the different funds that this object code is associated with. And again, I can see my totals. I can see the account budget percentage once I start getting things entered into here. And I can see that for any funds and object combo. This also tells you your segment order. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to look into this because it should actually show you funds, department, division, and your objects as well. So I'll take a look. And then we have the other one, the last one that I want to show you for today is going to be the year-to-date budget report. This one's a really common one that you'll use. This one's an actual physical printed report, so it's going to be a little bit different how you search for it. You can either do the search or the seg find. If you search, it's just going to let you search by the org. Seg find will let you search by department or division. So I can narrow this down if I want to, and then I can choose if I want to see just expense or just revenue or both. Probably only want active accounts. Okay, and then I can go to report options, and anytime I see something that says report options, it's going to allow me to choose how I want the data to display. So I can change the report title, I can change the sequence, so if I want it to go first by fund, then by department, I can do that, or I could do it by org. I can say how I want to order the accounts. So I can either do org object project or put it by full account. You guys are pretty much always going to use org object project. I can say include only accounts that used a certain percentage or greater of their budget. So if you want to see accounts that are getting close to going over budget, this is a great way to be able to do that. You can print the totals only. The account description, you can either use the full account or the short account description. Let's see, and then you will pick the year and period that you want to generate the report for. Let's see. And then you can suppress zero balance accounts if you want. And then you have some additional options on here. So you can play around with these when you have the time to kind of look. But as far as this goes, once you have your options, click accept, go back, and you can either output this to save it to the My Saved Reports, or in this case, I'm just going to click on a PDF so that you can see what accounts are in here. Okay, so here is what the report looks like. I've chosen to suppress zero balance accounts, so that's why it's looking like there's not a whole lot in here. But here is, I told it to sort first by funds and then by org, so it's going to also subtotal by each different department or each different org in this case. And it will tell me my original appropriations, budget transfers and amendments, revised budget, year-to-date expended, encumbrances available, and percentage used. Any questions on any of the reports that we've gone over so far, or are there any questions on other reports that you'd like to see?
So the program that we use now allows us to go into a specific line item and see what invoices have been paid against that line. Is that possible here?
Yes, so you could either click right from here, and it's going to take you to account inquiry. I'm going to do open link in new tab, right click and do open link in new tab. And so to see the invoices that have been processed against it, this one actually only has encumbrances, but you'd click on the folder and it will give you a listing of, in this case, it's all the encumbrances. Let me find one that has invoices. Let's see. I had one earlier. So it would be under actuals. So I'll click on the folder right here. And so it'll give me a listing of all the invoices. I only have one right now because this is just a training database and all it has in it is what we've done today. But it will give me, if I had 50 or 100 invoices in here, it will show me all of those.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did anyone else have any questions? Okay, so what I'm gonna do, like I said, there's a ton of reports in here. We don't have time to go through all of them today, but I definitely very much encourage you to go through and look for or look at all the different report options that we have. If there's any that you're not sure about, or there's reports that you need and you're not sure where to find them, you can definitely feel free to reach out to me. If there's no other questions, we can wrap up for today. What I can do is stay on the call for the next 15 minutes, and if anybody had any questions or wanted to go back over anything, I will help you with that. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, everyone. Like I said, I'll stay on the call either for the next 15 or until everybody has dropped off. But other than that, thank you all for today. You've done a great job. So just reach out to me if you have any questions.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
So can you show me how to do a trial balance?
Yes. So a trial balance is going to be under financials and general ledger menu. And it's either under here or end of period. Yeah, so account trial balance is at the end of the inquiries and reports right here. So account trial balance report.
It gave me an arrow too, Elisa.
Did you do this one or the balance report?
I did the balance report.
Okay, so go to general ledger menu and then journal entry history. We're going to do this one instead. I think I just had the wrong one. Were you able to get to the screen?
No, I'm working on it. Hold on.
Okay.
What is it again? Account trial.
balance. It just doesn't say report at the end. If you can't find it on the menu, you should actually be able to type it up here and it should come up for you once you click enter.
Yeah, I got it. I just want to make sure that I got it both ways.
Oh, okay. Okay, so once you get to here, you'll just search for the accounts that you want. You can pick by fund, department, division, or any combination of the above. And then you can narrow it down by account type if you want to, as well as account status. Then you can click on accept. Once you've clicked on accept, it'll tell you how many accounts were found. And from there, you can click on report options. And report options is going to let you choose whether you want detail or summary, if you want the fiscal year to date version, the reporting year and month, and then the dates that you want the detail for if you're doing a detail version. If you type an S into here, it won't ask you for that.
So I have a question for you because I have to do this every month though, like the expenses and the revenue. So it's going to be like year to date. Every month I have to report that to a third party. So how can I do that in Munis?
So you would still use this. You would just check off the fiscal year to date version. And then just make sure that your reporting period goes all the way up to the most recent fiscal month that you want to include.
So the thing is, like, I'm having problems with the accounts because we usually do it like 01, which is fund, the general fund, and then we do 3,000 to 3,999, whatever that range is. And that's how I do it right now. So in Munis, I'm kind of confused how to do that.
So to do that, I would go to the search again, and you said it's just for Fund 1?
Yeah, and then I need the revenue and the expenses separately.
Okay, so first we'll do one for expense, and then you said that you do it by a specific object code?
I think it's the revenue is 3,000 and the expenditure is 4,000. So that's the range. You know that we have that in
Oh,
USL.
you were doing the account range for the 4,000s instead. Okay, so you don't even need to do an account range then. You would just put in Fund 1 and then account type expense, and then click on accept.
So do I have to put the date in there? Because I'm going to do this in 2022. So
Yep,
okay.
so once you've done this piece and you've done Fund 1 and the expense, click on accept, and then it's going to take you to the screen. And once you do that, click on report options, and it will let you put in your dates and whether you want detail or summary.
And I do the same for the revenue account, right?
Yep, exactly the same.
So I don't have to put out a bunch of numbers that I used to, like
Nope.
with USL. Okay. Okay.
Okay, and then you can say how you want it to sort. Omit zero balance accounts if you want to. Do you usually do like a detail version or a summary?
I think we do a detail because we don't have the options to do like summary in USL. So I'm going to play around and see because I did that one this morning. I did one in USL and I was thinking about how I'm going to do this in Munis.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
yeah, it's pretty simple.
Okay. So if I click accept, I'll just show you what it looks like really quick before we break off, but I'll just do a PDF for this.
Okay.
And there's where what it's gonna look like.
So I can also do this in Excel, right? Because they're
Yep.
always asking me for that version instead.
Yep, the Excel button is right here.
Okay. All right. Awesome.
Did you have any other questions?
Yeah, I need to know how to reconcile the POs, but I think we can do that maybe later on, because the blanket POs is the one that is getting me a little bit, like, I'm a little concerned about that.
I would have them type in blanket in the requisition description. That's going to be the easiest way for you to tell when you're doing the invoices. But if you're just looking at the purchasing reports, there
Mhm.
should be an option to just look at blankets.
Okay. Okay, I think that's it for me. I'm going to be working on that vendor list. I'm going to go ahead and delete those errors on that report. And then I'm going to send you guys an email
Okay.
for final approval. Okay. Thank you, Elisa.
All right, you're welcome.
See you tomorrow.
Okay, bye.
Bye.